Hello, you guys. Good evening and welcome to The Art of Money. It's our very first podcast. So excited about this. Now, before we begin, let me say that I am not an expert. I am not offering investing or other financial advice. I am here just to share my experience. I've been broke, I've made good money, I've made bad investments, and I've made really good ones. My purpose for being here is to share my experience and what I've learned. So hopefully you can save time and turn money from being your oppressor into being your ally. All right. I'm just going to jump in. I've got a stack of people to get to. So let me get my little screen up here. Where'd you go? Where'd you go? All right. Hang on. I am dialing right now. All right. Our first up is Piranha May. Dialing Miss Piranha May right now. Let's see if I can get this thing working. There it goes. Yay! Live.
Hello.
Hi, Piranha May.
Hi.
Hi, welcome. You are on The Art of Money. Can you hear everything okay?
I think I can. Hang on. Let me just.
You're super muffled. Is there any way to change how you sound?
I can hear you, but I can't hear you. One more time.
Hello, you're super muffled. Can you change the way you're talking into the phone?
Got it. I'm good. Now I just need to turn my volume up on my Bluetooth. I'm good.
Okay.
Hi.
Cool. Hi. Yay. All right. So tell me your question. Tell me what's on your mind with regards to money.
Yeah. This has been really interesting because I've been constant because end of year and putting together taxes and getting everything organized. I'm an artist by trade. I've been a creative my entire life. I've made my money being a creative. So I'm not afraid of earning money, but I am fully and completely aware that I am trapped in the rat race. So I basically earn money to hold on to money to pay the bills and whatever emergencies come up, but I generally don't have any more money than that. And when I attempt to do things like my goal is to create streams of passive income outside of my art so that I can pay my bills and everything without having to show up to my, I don't want to put that pressure on what I do for a living.
So smart.
To pay for everything because it feels like a lot of pressure, right? Then all of a sudden I want to be able to do my job because I love to do my job, not because I have to pay my rent with it. But I have not been able to escape this rat race. And it's been interesting because every time I make an attempt, like I've invested in my own businesses, my friends' businesses, I've done a lot of things. I'll make a chunk of money or I'll get a chunk of money and I never know what to do with it. Yeah. So I'm always thinking, okay, now that I've got the chunk of money, I've got to create a stream of passive income. And my attempts, because I have no education in this area other than the self-education I've been trying to do over the years, and it never leads anywhere. And I'm not angry at money either. I'm like, I know I figure, I'm like, what? I am missing something in my brain that other people seem to have that just are like, okay, when they get money, this is what they know what to do. And I never know what to do. And I find that I'd like to have a financial advisor, but they don't want to work with somebody who has the amount of money I have, which is not as much as, other humans. So it's been in this really weird place. I don't know what to do.
Well, let's dissect all that for a minute, because I think a lot of people feel like that, I mean, cheers to you for having a great grasp of what's possible to free up your art. And I call this The Art of Money for a really specific reason, because I want to empower artists around money, because I want to live in a world where artists have money and power as well. You touched on something at the end of what you were talking about, which is going to a financial advisor. There are some out there who are really good, but they're few and far in between. Most financial advisors make their money off of fees associated with products and things. And again, there are some that are really great, but there are a lot that think they're doing great stuff, but what they're selling is neither safe nor going to help you.
Right.
What I think is important is to be, first of all, let's shift your language around money. Because there were a few sentences that came through, which are, I just don't have that thing. And I don't know how to do that thing. And I just don't have that thing. So let's just.
Because that's what it feels like. And I have most of the men in my life are like, even my accountant this week was like, just stick to what you know.
Oh,
He's
don't.
looking at my money, just saying, just stick to what you know. I'm like, but you don't know what it is I'm trying to create. Like,
Oh, yeah,
of
no.
course you want me to be safe and you're playing it on the conservative edge because that's your job. You're my accountant, but that's not helpful for my state of consciousness.
Well, and
I'm
let me
trying to
also
break
tell
through.
you that I have gotten burned delegating things that I don't know. You need to understand when
Yeah.
you give your stuff over to an accountant to do your taxes, you're delegating, right? But you need to at
Yes.
least have
Yes.
an understanding. Everybody, and I know this is the last thing y'all want to hear. Everybody who works for themselves or works on the side or makes their own money needs to download a copy of the IRS Schedule C. It's only a couple pages. Don't freak out. It's just, and what you
IRS
need,
Schedule
Schedule
C.
C, and have a look at what the different categories are. Don't freak out. Just read it over. Take your time. Just read like that bottom half
What
where you
if I
see all
don't
these.
understand it?
Well, if you don't understand it, slow it down and do it because you're an artist. Do it as if you were, let's say, an actor, or a
Okay.
painter. Like, let's say you were a writer or an actor. Let's do it as if you were creating a script and you're trying to sell
Right.
someone this product or explain it to them. You would say, okay, there's this section where you put in your personal information. Then there's this section where you put in how much you made, your income. I don't know what those two terms mean. Don't worry about those. Then there's this section, which is, oh, okay, these are the different kinds of expenses I have. I created a long time ago when I was like 18 or 20, somewhere in that range. I worked for my accountant to pay for him doing my taxes. So I did filing, and I used to keep my own books. I have a business degree, and I just looked at the Schedule C at the different categories that there were, and I made a file folder for each of those categories. Let's say car expenses, marketing
Mm-hmm.
expenses. Office expenses, and every time I had a receipt, I just throw it in one of those files, and I nowadays you can put it in Quicken, or I had a handwritten ledger, and it's just almost like when you
I
finally.
actually use Ziploc bags. I have different
Great.
Ziploc bags for
Okay.
all the different things.
Great. Do you have QuickBooks or Quicken? Sorry, Quicken. QuickBooks is a little
I
better.
don't use any of that. I've tried. It failed miserably for me. I can't. It's
Okay.
too much for my brain.
What
My brain does not operate well with that.
what about let me think of this in artist terms. Well, first thing you want to do is just get those Ziploc bags going and look at them at the end of the month and just kind of breeze through them. Do you receive checks for what you do?
Yes,
Do you add up your checks
I do.
and put them in the bank?
Yes.
Okay.
I have a corporation, so I put
So
in my corporate thing. Yeah.
your block is not about those numbers. It's about the weight of those numbers. It's about what those numbers mean, and that they mean you've got to give out money, and is there going to be enough flow? And yes, there's going to be enough flow because I'm sure you believe in the flow, but there's a certain amount of anxiety around those numbers. There's not anxiety when the money's coming in. There's
Well,
just
I don't know what to do with it. Like, I know what to do with the overhead and the amount of money I need for my overhead. But if there's extra money, that's when I panic. I'm like, I've got extra money. I'm supposed to do something with it so I can retire, and I don't know what to do with it.
Okay.
Then it just sits there for long periods of time. And then, of course, an emergency comes up for something.
Of course,
like if I don't use it, then life is going to provide a way for me to use it.
Of course, and it always will.
Is what I've been doing.
Let me offer this up to you. I want you to get a pen, and I want you to write this down.
Okay.
And I want you to say it every single time you feel that confusion and anxiety. I want you to say this sentence: I expand in love, success, and abundance every day. As I inspire others, to do the same. What that will do is give your brain something else to focus on. Okay. And there's a metaphysical level of this. And there's also something as simple as the reticular formation of the brain, which it's green Toyotas. When you think of green Toyotas, they're everywhere, and before you thought of them, you never saw one. Right. The other thing you need is a structure.
Yeah, the awareness.
Yeah. You need a structure and a plan. You are now accountable for building up a bank account, just like you owe rent, car, any debt that you need to pay. You are now accountable for paying yourself first. So take 10 to 15% of everything you make, and you're going to stick it in.
I do that.
Good.
I do that. I call it my financial freedom account.
Okay, great. So
and I put the money there, and then it builds up, but I don't know what to do with it.
Okay, so now we're into an
It just sits
investing
there.
conversation. Yeah. And
Okay.
that's what needs to happen. So this is where it's time for you to start looking at what is interesting to you. Like everybody says, diversify, diversify, diversify. My own personal philosophy, and again, I'm not a financial expert, but my personal philosophy is slightly different. Okay, let me back up. Here's the big picture as I see it. You have your monthly expenses, right? Whatever that
I
monthly
do.
nut is, let's say it takes you $4,000 a month to survive. Okay.
Right.
And you're an artist, you said, so your income is going to go up and down, kind of, and this is good for freelance people as well. Put 10 months of living expenses in an account you are not allowed to touch.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
That's your first step. So that's what, 40 grand. Okay. And for some people, this is going to sound insane and out of reach, but it's not. It's absolutely not. Put that out of reach.
No,
Yeah.
if you do it consistently, it would make sense.
You'll get there.
A little bit consistently, right?
Yeah, no, consistently. Not a little bit, but did you mean a little bit, comma, consistently, or a little bit consistently?
Like yeah, that 10% consistently.
Yes, exactly. Yes, exactly. So
Yeah.
you put your, and basically forget about the details for everybody else. Put your survival money away. So if you get really sick, if you lose your job, if you've got to move home to take care of an aging or ill family member, you got a pad. You're not going to lose it, you know? Put that money away. And then once that's
when
done.
When you say put it away, what do you mean by you putting it away? Just in a savings account?
Yep. Or stick it in the safest account you can find out there. The safest account you can find out there. Like a really safe account. Make sure that the bank has an FDIC guarantee, which is the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. And speaking of emergencies, everybody should have at least, depending on the cost of living in the city you're in, $1,500 to $3,000 cash on hand in smaller bills, stored someplace very safe. If you have a home safe, don't put it in there, because that's the first place people go if they break into your house. Just find some very creative place to put it. I've heard some incredible stories. I won't name any of them because I don't want to give away those sources. But hey, if anybody from my Twitter feed is listening, feel free to post some cool ideas. But when you store that money, that cash in small bills, you don't want large bills, in Ziploc bags, make sure you put some of those silica gel things in there with them, the kind you get out of vitamins, because the money will mold from temperature changes if you're putting it anywhere, where the temperature goes up and down. You need that for emergencies. If you live in the Midwest or in the North, you need it if there's a horrible snowstorm and you can't get out into the bank for 3 days. You need it here if we have an earthquake on the West Coast and you can't get anywhere for 3 days. Just like you need water, you're going to need some cash. Get small bills so you don't draw attention to yourself when you go out and go to buy something when you finally can get to the store. It's just a safety net. You may never need it, but if you don't have it, guess what? You're going to need it.
That's a great idea. I've never thought of that.
Yes. So it's just like you want to have water stored and you want to have enough food stored for an emergency. Everybody needs to be responsible this way. We have to take care of ourselves. And this is my opportunity to plug CERT training, which is Community Emergency Response Team. I'm updating my training next month. Everybody needs to be able to take care of themselves. One of the first things they taught us is, if a disaster hits, no one's coming for you because they're going to be home helping their own families. And when they can finally get into the station to help you, then you'll get some help. But the people who are going to get help first are going to be the most serious cases. So you need to be able to get by when you're mildly uncomfortable. All right. So back to your long-term financial plan. What we've done is we've gotten you on a regular plan. We've gotten your safety net put away. First thing you need to do is tackle your debt and eliminate debt. Debt eats up your cash flow, and it eats up, you're paying interest on stuff. That's just a poor expenditure of money. Even though interest rates are low, it's draining you. And unless the only debt I carry is debt on something that's putting money in my pocket, like, a rental home or an apartment building, or for me, it's real estate. I'm a real estate person.
Right.
So step 1, put the safety net. Step 2, get rid of your debt. And, we can talk more detail about that for those out there who need that. And step 3 is find out what's your happy place. There's a whole myth out there that artists aren't good with money. And I'm ready to smash that myth to bits because look at the world it's gotten us
Yay!
into. Yeah, let's just throw that out the door right now. I spent my whole life feeling less creative because I really like business and money. And I spent my life feeling like a dilettante in business because I'm really creative. And you know what? I'm done with
Yeah,
that whole thing. It's a cultural conversation. It's just noise in your head. You can pick a channel of noise
right.
that you prefer and makes you happy. So why not do that?
Yeah,
So for me, there's some of the places you can learn about investing are stocks. There's a thing called Forex, which is currency exchange. And these are just a few. There are more advanced forms of stock stuff, and there's real estate. I prefer real estate. And you hear people say diversify, diversify, diversify. But when you look at the wealthiest people in the world, they diversify inside what they know. Warren Buffett diversifies inside business building, which in our current market looks like stocks. So he knows everything there is to know about businesses. He's got a bunch of different diverse businesses. For me, my happy place, and I'm no mogul, believe me, I'm just sharing my tiny experience. I've tried stocks and I just eat dirt and poo every time because I like real estate. And I keep trying to diversify like they told me until I sort of figured this out. I'm no longer doing that. I am just going into real estate. I'm in single family a little bit, but I'm mostly in multifamily. And your hedge against risk in anything involving money is knowledge. And don't go to sleep. There's a reason we all went to sleep. And this is when I would listen up. Seriously, everybody out there, listen up. We live in the matrix, and no one told you. Our school system was created largely, and please correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is that our school system was created largely during the Victorian era, our current structure. And why was that? Well, because they needed to run a global empire from a tiny little island in the Atlantic Ocean. And how do you do that without computers? You create a giant human supercomputer. You standardize reading, writing, and arithmetic, and you teach people how to execute your orders. We are not trained to look at the system and make it work for us. It's the outliers and the mavericks who do that. And
yeah,
people always try to pull them back into the fold. Don't you want to just get a good job? Don't you want to just do this? Well, that paradigm's over. The future belongs to those
yeah.
who are adaptable and those who can think on their feet. So for you, think about what is your happy place. Let's eliminate any debt you've got and start to examine whether you feel like real estate or looking at which businesses or the stock market interest you at all. Or short of that, which stock market funds do you think do really well? Like open up your mind and pretend like you're going to either write a series about or do, a picture of or
Well,
act in a role
it's
of a mogul. And how would that mogul
this.
behave?
Yeah, this is the situation I'm in. I did spend a number of years studying stocks and investments and longs and shorts and currencies and all of that. And I understood it and I enjoyed the process, but I only ever broke even. I never made money. I never really lost money. I always came out exactly the way I started, which I thought was funny. The real estate terrifies me, absolutely terrifies me. I don't even own my own house for myself because I'm terrified of owning my own house. Like I have a lot of fear around real estate. I love the idea of like having a laundromat or a parking lot or something automated that makes automated passive income. I like that idea for some reason, which is really kind of real estate in itself. So I don't know why I'm open to, like, it's the back door to me getting to real estate. That would be interesting.
So here's what I want you to do. I want you to go on LoopNet. Actually, I just want you to Google. You need to look into which cities are growing, and there's a way to do that. Just Google top 10 cities to live in 2017. Okay. And actually Google top 10 small towns or top 20 small towns to live in 2017. That's going to lead you to where the jobs are going. And that's going to give you a better safety net. And you want to look for, if you're going to invest in something like that, you want to look at inelastic demand. Laundry is inelastic demand. Parking lots, inelastic demand. Inelastic demand means if everything goes into the toilet tomorrow, people still have to have it, and they got to have clean clothes and they got to have a place to park their car. So those are really good businesses. So, if you live in a major city, it might be too expensive, but you can look for some smaller outlying cities, maybe back where your family lives, something like that, or in a small town of a friend, something like that, and start to open up conversations and sort of do Google searches around this and just start to investigate it. Give yourself permission to do that. But the first thing I would say is I want you to see yourself owning one and see the check coming in, not like magic, but to
Yeah.
get your reticular brain to open up and give your
Yeah.
subconscious permission to do that, because you don't have to
Yeah.
believe, you don't have to believe it. You literally just have to see yourself like a commercial, holding that beer
Right.
or eating that burger, and you could
Right.
conceivably see yourself doing it. It's the same mechanism. So yeah. Oh, is that helpful?
Yeah, it is.
Good.
That's super helpful. Thank you.
Good.
That was great. Thank you very much.
Bet. My pleasure. Yeah, and feel free to email me if there's anything else I can do to help, and we'll get on and discuss this again.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Best to you.
You
Bye.
too. Thank you
Okay.
so much.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Let's see here. Hi, guys. I forgot I was on the air for a second. I'm going to start calling. Next up, I'm going to call Dr. Elena Chandler. I'm dialing right now. That matrix thing is really, really important. Like, we're not educated financially, and there's a reason. It keeps us as consumers and kind of blind to what's going on out there. All right, let's see if she's home. Anybody home? Anybody home? It's fun to meet you guys after talking to you on Twitter. It's really cool. It's ringing.
Hello.
Hi, is this Elena?
It is. This is Jennifer.
Yes, it is. How are you?
I'm very well. I'm pleased to meet you.
Pleased to meet you as well. So tell me what your money question is. Let's talk about it.
Well, I realize after that last one, mine's more theoretical, but I was wondering, my understanding of it's pretty limited, so please correct me, that in a capitalist society, the customers are the people who have, we can go to another place and give them our business. But what we have now is corporate capitalism, where the stockholder is the customer that has to be kept happy. Is that correct?
I'm not an economic theorist. I'm just a layperson who nerds out over this stuff. Honestly, what I believe we have is an oligarchy, where if you look at, just to explain a concept, and some of you may already be really familiar with this, there's a concept of net worth, which is if you add up everything you have, like your car, if you have a house, all the stuff you have and what you could sell it for tomorrow and how much cash you'd have on hand versus everything you owe, and subtract what you owe from what you have, the bottom line is your net worth.
Right.
Let's say with everything you have, it's $100,000 worth of equity in your house and your car and, all the savings you ever have, and everything you owe, let's say it's $40,000. Your net worth is $60,000 because it's 100 minus 40, right?
Right.
So the growth in net worth of the bottom 90% of people since 1987, and I believe this is specific to the US. This is a statistic from David Stockman, a really smart guy, way smarter than me about this stuff. The growth in net worth, of the bottom 90% of us since 1987 has been flat as a pancake, 0% growth. The growth in net worth of the top 10% has been 300%. Their net worth has grown 300%. Now, that's not all. The Forbes 400 richest people in the world, their net worth has grown 1,000%.
Wow.
So what that is basically is that the money's getting hoarded up by the top, 1%. Less than 1%. I saw an article about a year and a half ago written by a bazillionaire. I cannot remember his name, but it was a great article. And it was to his fellow bazillionaires, basically saying that the system as we have it now is not sustainable. And the article was entitled, "The Pitchforks Are Coming." And I would like to be a pitchfork. I consider myself a pitchfork. I'm not into violence. Well, on my best days, I'm not into violence. Don't get me on a bad day. I think we have to wake the hell up. We're inundated with so much information. We're being kept in the dark. And what we have now is an oligarchy. We've got a cartel there was a thing that formed. There's a great book called The Creature from Jekyll Island. It's like a 24-hour audio book. It's insanely long and geez, it's definitely got a point of view, but long story short, they created the Federal Reserve, which was supposed to just kind of help us, sort out money flow and the government level and things like that. And now it basically is tasked with running the economy, which is not what it was created for. They have failed at that job for at least 7 years, 8 years running. And if you'd done that in the private sector, you'd have been fired. So what this means for people on the ground is, it's overwhelming to look at everything that's wrong, but just pick a couple things and take them on. Like I'll be launching a website sometime in the next 4 weeks called constructiveaction.org. And it's the Constructive Action Network. And on one side of the page are links to various organizations that have, like Planned Parenthood, if that's your jive, or NRDC, the Natural Resources Defense Council, Sierra Club, Southern Poverty Law Center, ACLU, but places where the money goes to work. And I welcome inputs from all you guys via Twitter. I'm at Hale Tweets, as you know, about really effective organizations. And so that's going to be one side of it. And the other side is going to be very easy links to make one phone call a day. Our goal is 100,000 people, because that would be 100,000 phone calls a day. And on the donation side, if people donated $5 or more a month to a couple things they care about, that's like $500,000 a month to fund the attorneys, basically, for these organizations to try to strip apart the oligarchy. I think that was Bernie Sanders' appeal, really, because he calls attention, and he and Elizabeth Warren, they tell it like it is. We've got a situation where, for example, the Wells Fargo people, for those of you who don't know, Wells Fargo did some really shady stuff, opening up a bunch of accounts for people without their authorization and then charging them for that privilege. And there were hearings at Congress about that. And basically the long and the short of it is, to date, is that the mid-level and just you and me kind of lay people employees who executed the orders of upper management were fired. And upper management were, some of them released with their giant golden parachutes, and some of them just released with medium golden parachutes. The system is completely jacked up. But until you and I and everybody else starts saying something, it's not going anywhere. And I think people don't say anything, or they talk a good game on Twitter and they don't get off the couch because they're overwhelmed. So if you break it down to a small actionable item once a day, just like I'm going to, eat breakfast or eat lunch or brush my teeth, I'm going to make my phone call. I already signed up for the given $5 a month thing. I can give up one latte or burger or whatever it is that, is my joy for that one thing to make the world a little better. Because if we don't take this world in hand, we're done. We're done. So I don't know if that answers your question, but.
Are you coordinating? You said you were going to have this, I forgot, but I wrote it down and I can't read it. Your website.
Yeah. Constructiveaction.org.
And you'll give us calls to action from there?
I will. Once it's live, I will absolutely get that up there. Yeah.
All right. I'm all in on that. That sounds really good.
Great. Yeah. I appreciate the retweets, and I appreciate, I know everybody didn't jump onto my Twitter feed to find somebody who's a crazy radical, but that's me. I'm foaming at the mouth, and I'm done. I'm
done. That was actually why I jumped on there.
Oh, good. Yeah. I've had enough of your disingenuous bullshit with our economy. So yeah, there's a little shout out to my Mass Effect fans. Yeah. Well, anything else, Elena? I don't know if that answered your question, but
no. That helped a lot, and I really appreciate it. I'm going to keep an eye out for that website.
Yeah, absolutely. And a couple of books are The Creature from Jekyll Island. What is that? Confessions of an Economic Hitman by John Perkins. Of course, Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. That's a really good one. It's really easy. It's it's straight to it. Yeah. All right.
I'll read those.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
You bet. Have a beautiful night.
You too. Bye-bye.
All right. Yes, we're deep down the rabbit hole now. When I first started stumbling onto this and some of this information, I thought the people who were sharing with me were a little touched. I started reading it and I went, man, if they're crazy, then I'm crazy too, because this is totally making sense to me. It's a little scary. But next up, I'm reaching out to Nicole. Let's see if she's around. Everybody grab a drink of water. That's what I'm doing.
Hello.
Nicole?
Mm.
Hi, it's Jennifer Hale. How are you?
Hi, Jennifer. Nice to hear you. How are you?
Great. Welcome to the Art of Money. So let's talk about your question. Tell us your question so everybody can hear.
Well, ironically, everything you've talked about so far is a pretty great introduction. I'm really in sync with everything you've said, and that's a surprise. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Let's talk about where you are in that progression, if you want to. You're, are you in the stage of still trying to get the paycheck to catch up with the bills? Are you in the stage of, I need to get rid of some debt? Where are you right now on that walk?
Well, actually, I think I'm in a pretty good position right now because I've had some of the experience that you've talked about in the past. And when I consider what I would like someone who's younger than me, who is starting out on this road, to consider for their financial security, the questions that you were asking really kind of resonated. So all I wanted to say was, when you're talking about financial security, especially in an economic, uncertain time.
Oh yeah.
It's important for you to make some very basic decisions, and investments and stuff, and they're very advanced, and that's great. But I think for the average person, the first question they need to be asking themselves is, how can I be more secure?
Yeah. Well, and we live in an age of uncertainty. I think I said it a minute ago, adaptability is like the superpower of the 21st century, and especially in terms of employment. The one thing I think is important for everybody to keep an eye on in terms of what you just said, which is right on, is that there's an enormous amount of uncertainty out there right now. In the last crash and believe, I'm not an economist, but I'm a nerd and I read, and a couple of my sources said that there was around $1 trillion in really stinky bad debt that started the whole snowball crash thing. Right now, sitting out there, according to those same sources, there's between $5 and $7 trillion of stinky debt waiting to hit us upside the head. And what that will do is destabilize the global economy. And this time, China doesn't have its massive purchasing power to come in and rescue us. We don't have, our interest rates are so low, there's nowhere for the Fed to go to try to pump up that economy. And,
absolutely.
And there are some people out there who voted for our incoming president. And I think part of that was hopes for a different economic future, not unlike what people wanted to see during the Reagan era, because what happened, what Jimmy Carter had kind of gone through was a very difficult time. And when Reagan came in, but it's a totally different picture now. It's not the same. When Reagan came in, our debt to GDP ratio, which is like your debt to income ratio, let's say you got $100,000 in income and you got $40,000 in debt, you're like, 40%. Okay, I'm all right. I'm a little out of hand, but that's okay. That was what it was when Reagan took office. It was 40% debt to our GDP. Now it's 104% debt to GDP. We are now
it's crazy.
spending $104 for every $100 we have. It's nutballs.
That's right.
And then on top of that, he had 18% interest rates, so he could just lower them down as far as he wanted to stimulate growth. We don't have that. And part of the issue is that what happened in 2008 was not a cyclical correction. It wasn't like, oh, it's just one of those cycles. It was a structural correction, because what we have globally is something called deflation. And deflation is when wages go down. They're dropping because of globalization. Because look, when the first plane crossed the Atlantic way back when and people were on it, that opened up the door for globalizing trade, for trade between countries. It took a while to happen, but it was coming. That ship has sailed. It's done. I appreciate nationalism. I appreciate America first, but we also live in a people also like their Walmart goods at cheap prices. It's all just part of the big picture. And then the other thing that's happening is that technology is coming in and it's taking away jobs. And that's
exactly where I was going. That's right.
It's not going away. It's not going away. So what you have to do is figure out, all right, where's my hunker down point? Where's like the minimum I can live off of? Can I live below my means? Can I live without what the Matrix is trying to sell me? Because here's the history of demand, consumer demand in this country. There's a book called Captains of Consciousness I read way back in college, which is longer ago than I care to admit. And it talked about how before the Industrial Revolution, when people could mass produce stuff, only the wealthy could have like certain like special lamps and cool desks and, neat furniture because it was custom made, right? But once they started mass producing everything, any Joe on the street could have it, right? And then everybody kind of bought what they needed. And like, we have to keep these factories going. What are we going to do? We need to create demand because it's all about supply and demand, right? And so they created advertising and marketing. So people are marketed to from the time they're tiny little infants, they're being marketed to. Little kids being marketed to train them to be consumers. So I invite everybody out there. I mean, you're very aware, you see the big picture, but I invite everybody out there who hasn't considered this, have a look at what's actually an original thought. What do you actually need? What do you really need? Yeah. Like I never forget, I went to Thailand it was just a couple of weeks, and I was teaching English at a little tiny place there just to get away a few years ago. And I came back to America after living in a village where there were kids who hunted rats and lizards for dinner because that's what they had and didn't have clean drinking water. And I was stunned by that. I didn't need anything. It was clear as a bell. And I could only have that experience for me by actually physically going there, but you don't have to go all the way to Thailand to do it. Every town's got a really hard hit section and you just go spend some time there. Volunteering is like the antidote, I think, to so many of our troubles today. Way back when, sailors had scurvy. If anybody remembers scurvy, they were all dying of scurvy and all they needed was a lime. They were deficient in vitamin C, but they were dropping dead like flies. We have a form of scurvy and it's called entitlement. And what we need to bust that disease that's feeding corporate pockets is to get out and volunteer and give back.
Absolutely. But there are also steps that we can take that make us more secure against any sort of upheaval, whether it's corporate or logistic or not. And one of the things that I think most people need to take into consideration is, and one of the things that I, at the age of 18, decided was a fundamental bucket list goal was to own my own home free and clear. If you have a place that the government by law can't take from you and that no one can push you off, you have a lot more flexibility in this life than most people can claim. The problem when you're talking about home ownership is that very, very few people can afford to pay cash for it. So the big question that comes in is, what do you do? The only option available really is a mortgage, right?
I have a formula for that. By the way, number one, the government can take you out. Property taxes and eminent domain.
Well, sure.
There's always that threat. So just have that in the back of your head. Just know that. I have a formula for home purchasing, and I do it every time I get a piece of real estate. Let's say the house, just for argument's sake, is a $100,000 house, and 20% down, that's $20,000. And let's say the mortgage on the house is going to be $600 a month. These numbers are just out of thin air. They're not based on anything. Let's say mortgage, taxes, and insurance, full expenses on the house are going to be $750 a month, right?
Okay.
So the house is $100,000. Down payment's $20,000. The cash to keep that house alive and going, mortgage, taxes, and insurance, is $750 a month. I will, if you have a job that's in high demand, you can do 6 months worth of safety net, but I like 10 months. I just feel, for me, I'm a 10-month person because I've been freelancing.
I like a year.
Well, yeah. So let's just take 10 months because it's easier for math. So you have to save up $20,000. You also have to save up 10 months worth of safety net for that house, which is 750 times 10, which is, or however many months you decide. I like 750 or 10 because it's easy. So you got to save up another 7,500. So what you actually have to save for that house is $27,500. You put the $20,000 down on it. You put the 7,500 in an account you cannot touch. If you are disabled, if you have a medical issue, if someone in your family, if one of those disasters happens, you got 10 months to take roommates in, which they do all the time in Europe. I don't know why we don't do it more here.
Understood.
Yeah, take roommates in or put the house on the market and sell it. And you've got enough in the bank, you can afford to sell it at a loss if you need to. Now that gets to the second half of the formula. Second half of the formula is if you're in a market like we're in right now, it's a hotter market. The prices have come back. Everybody's feeling really happy. You pay that mortgage down. Like, let's say Zillow or the local realtor or whoever you feel like talking to says your house is worth, just for math, $100,000, right? I personally knock 30% off of that and I say, no, my house is worth $70,000 because if we have another economic crash, 30% of that value's gone out the door. So I make sure that my mortgage is paid down to $70,000 and I still have that 10 months of support in the bank. Then the money that I save after that, I can take a vacation. I can start to invest. I've got my basic safety needs met. And I don't have to have enough cash to buy a $100,000 house outright, because there's such a concept. I prefer to carry some debt, but it's only debt that puts money in my pocket, like a house investment, things like that. Because there's a thing called the velocity of money. If you take $100,000 and you buy one house with it, right? You're not getting any income. If you take that same $100,000 and let's say, say you've got $100,000 to invest, you buy a house $100,000 outright, right? And that house gives you, let's say $1,200 a month. I'm trying to keep this too simple, too complicated, but let's just say it gives you, $2,000 a year in income from rentals and stuff after all your expenses and stuff. Your return on that is 2%. Right? Let's say instead you do 20% down and you follow my little formula. So instead you don't get 5 houses for your 100,000, maybe you get 3, right? You got that 100,000 and you put 20,000 into it. Now you've got 3 houses bringing you $2,000 a year. You spent $100,000 and you're getting $6,000 a year instead of 2,000. That's the velocity of money. But you have to be a good money manager on your own first. Don't go there yet for people who haven't done it yet.
Yeah, plus you have to be able to manage the maintenance on those houses, which gets a little bit complicated.
That's my other recommendation is I do not do my own. We had our own properties for a while. We did our own maintenance and stuff. And my husband's amazing at that, but it burns you out. And that's the fastest way to get out of rental properties is be your own landlord. Don't do it. Hire a property management company. It's worth every penny.
Absolutely.
Every penny.
And that's really great investment advice. But when I'm talking about just like the single person, the common person who's trying to get by, investment properties might be something that's a little bit far-fetched at the beginning. Like say you're 25 years old, right?
But they're a boat. They need to know where they're going. They're a boat.
Right.
They need to know where they're going. Yeah. And actually I've got a couple of those people in the queue that I'd love to talk to.
Great.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Nicole. This was great. This was really, really great. Yeah.
May I ask you just a couple other questions that might be really informative for the listener? So when you're taking out a mortgage, there's 2 pretty important points that I don't think really are explained. And this is part of the whole matrix thing that I think you were talking about. You're not really educated on how things work from a picture model. You're given these fine print 25-page documents, sign at the bottom here, and good luck. And I don't really think that people have that information available to them when they're making these very, very important financial decisions. And that's where I think your strength comes in. Could you please comment on what it's like to sign a mortgage for a compound interest deal where the full amount that you're going to end up paying on that house that you bought for $100,000 is actually $400,000 to $500,000. And could you also comment on maybe why the tax break, that is one of the biggest selling points for mortgages in our current economic situation, really don't provide the bang for the buck that people really foresee happening?
Well, both of those are answered by sort of you're right, by the skimming of large corporations. In terms of, in terms of the tax break, it depends on everybody's picture, and that's an accountant question. But I invite people to actually, even if they're going to H&R Block, just make them explain it to you until you understand, or keep calling me until I can answer that question, because it's a case-by-case basis. It's best illustrated, like with, somebody having the numbers in front of me. But you're right. It doesn't, because you only get to write off the interest. It's not your principal. That payment's broken into two pieces. You're paying down the principal, which is like that $100,000, and then you're paying down the interest, which is what it costs you to borrow that money. And the interest is the only thing that's deductible, and that declines over time as you begin to pay down the loan.
Right.
That's sort of a very short answer. The second thing about signing those contracts, the first house I bought, I will admit I did not read the whole thing. But after that, I made myself sit down, and good Lord, I fell asleep, but I made myself read those contracts. And for people who have like dyslexia or, attention issues, or just can't slog through it, your broker is getting paid. Your notary who you sign those documents with is getting paid. There are attorneys involved. You sit down with them and you do not let them out of the room. You book an hour and a half with them, and you make them walk you through every paragraph till you understand what you're committing to. You only have to do it a couple times, and then the next time you'll be able to sit down with them and go, okay, it's the same. Yes. Okay, great. All right. Okay, good. All right. I understand now. Because you are liable for what you sign. Yeah. And you're paying them. Use them. Yeah.
Well, that's a great point. Also, just they're also liable. They have to educate you on matters that are appropriate to the conversation. If they don't do that well enough, that's on them.
Right.
It's a fiduciary contract.
Right. Exactly. And people tend, us lay people tend to walk through the world feeling embarrassed that we don't know or understand this stuff. People make a ton of money off the fact that you don't understand it. They know well you don't understand it, and don't feel dumb about it. I walk through life like a complete idiot. I don't know. What is that? I don't know. What is that? What is that? Can you explain that to me? I am what I call a happy pest. And I just go, what is that? What is that? I don't know. It's the beginner mind. Take on the notion of the beginner mind. It's extremely helpful. So,
my gosh, if that's the only point people take away, I hope they do.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Nicole. Have a beautiful night.
You too. Take care.
Okay. Bye. You are listening to The Art of Money. I think we have time for another call. We are going to reach out to Zyliak. I think that's how you say it. I know I'm going to be corrected as soon as I dial this number. All right. I'm not going to say the number out loud. That's a hazard of speaking for a living. I'll say your phone number out loud. No, I won't. Calling right now. Let me know how this stuff is landing for you guys, too. I want to hear.
Hello?
Hi. Okay, I don't know if I'm going to say this right. Zyliak? Zyliak?
Ziliak.
Zyliak. I got it. How are you, Zyliak? It's Jennifer Hale. You're on The Art of Money. How are you?
I'm doing all right.
Good. So let's hear your question. Tell me how I can help you.
Okay. Let me see. Just so I can recall, because it was a bit of a while ago. Oh, yeah. So you asked what were your feelings about money, and I basically said that I feel like money, I both love and hate money, because what I hate about it basically is that I need it. And it always feels like the value of my work and the value of the money I get from it don't always match up with each other.
Yeah.
And same with like when I see my friends who are like artists and creatives, and they're also trying to make money, and it just always feels like they can put hours and hours and hours into something and it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Art's a really subjective thing. A long time ago, I've made my living as an artist my whole life. And a long time ago, in my mind, I separated art from money. As an actor and a singer, I would just show up and do an audition, and I would let it go. And because otherwise I'd go crazy. And I realized a long time ago that if I put commercial pressure on my art, I would shut myself down. And I just put it out there to the universe. I sort of declared an intention of what I needed financially. I wrote it all out. I did the whole visualizing thing that people talk about. I have a certain amount of belief in the metaphysical, but also there's a thing that's just pure science, which is the reticular formation of the brain, which I've mentioned it a couple times tonight. It's the thing that has you see green Toyotas when you never thought about them before, as soon as you set your mind to seeing them. And that's the unconscious, harnessing the power of the unconscious to go to work for what you need. And anytime I would feel anxious about not having enough, I would say, nope, I am excited and grateful for, X amount of dollars, whatever I said, is already on its way to me. And I didn't care how it got there. And I didn't tie it to my art. I had to separate the two, because otherwise I'd walk around angry and I'd walk around with a chip, which would diminish the actual value of my work. And it would actually bring my energy to the kind of tone that people don't enjoy being around,
Yeah. And I totally understand that. I mean, I have friends who have been very successful, and I'm actually someone who is very new to the whole idea of art and money, because I've just this past year, the second half of this past year, started pursuing my own ambitions.
Mm-hmm.
And I have friends who have been doing this for years, friends who are either much older than me or just much more talented than me, whatever, and who have managed to make it work.
Okay, you have two things. I got to stop you right there. You have two things. You have two limitations you just threw out that are living in your unconscious. Did you hear them?
No.
Okay, friends who are older than me and friends who are more talented than me. You have decided that you don't have the age right, and you've decided that you don't have the talent right. And that is a decision that's living in your unconscious right now. It's coming out through your language. You listen to somebody long enough, myself included, and where they're stopped will come out through their language. We are honestly we are what is in our own way most of the time. There are certain exceptions, and that's not a bad thing. That's not your fault at all. That's not anything you've done wrong. That's actually a fantastic thing, because what you're seeing is your path. So your path is to embrace exactly how old you are and exactly the flavor of talent that you are. And your path is you don't have to believe it yet, but you just have to see it. I talked about this earlier. I mean, they've done studies. You just have to see yourself doing it. It's not about belief. See yourself with a big fat bank account from the work you do. And it's not your business how it gets there. It's just your business to know that it's on its way there. They've done studies of Olympic athletes where they have actually quantified that 70% of their achievements come from the visualizations that they do, and 30% come from the physical practice that they do. And we can adopt that. We can adopt that as artists and as people in our relationship to money. And let me ask you this.
Saying,
yeah, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Okay, well, I was just going to try and clarify. So what you're saying is it's more about what you want than how you get there?
Yes. Well, God, I don't have my quotes on my wall. I have all these quotes on my wall, and they're not up here right now. I got to put them back up. One of my favorite quotes is, and this is a god-awful butchering paraphrasing of it, is that one of the hardest things for people in achieving what they want is trying to mind all the details of how it happens. You don't. I do what I call set it and forget it. I set my goals because I'm full of big goals and big dreams, et cetera, and I'll set them and I'll write it out. Sometimes I'll write it on a piece of paper and, like burn the edges of it, and then I'll stick it in a drawer, whatever. And then I forget it, and I'll show up in my day and do what's in front of me, do the footwork. I mean, obviously you can't set goals and then sit your butt on the couch and go, why don't I have any money? Yeah, you didn't get off the couch, But you set it and then just show up and say yes to whatever's coming your way, because you may have an idea about what you think I moved out to LA way back, because I booked a bunch of film and TV work out of Atlanta, and I thought, okay, I'll go do that out in LA. And lo and behold, I end up with a voiceover career, and I didn't even know that was a possibility. But if I had kept going, no, but I want this, no, but I want that, I'd be unhappy and I would have less flow. So just set what you want and then show up. And then also, does your family legacy give you permission to have money?
Does mine? Not so much.
There you go. That's where you start. Because there's a lot of times when people come from a place where they weren't, like I had an experience not too long ago, a few months ago. I went to a particular, I do a lot of investments in real estate and stuff, and I went to a particular gathering of people and pretty much came out of there with everything I needed and more. And I spent the next 2 months getting sick twice, absolutely terrified that I was going to, cock it and just keel over. And it was all my anxiety around, not on an unconscious level. Something was saying that it's dangerous to have that much. It's dangerous to succeed that much. But I recognized it, and I just accepted it. And there was a mantra that I gave someone else earlier. I read a book called The Big Leap by a guy named Gay Hendricks. It's a great little book. It's an easy read. It's a great book. I highly recommend it, especially if you come from a background that's like, because we struggled a lot when I was growing up. And there's a conversation about people with money, which is, oh, those people, oh, that, so you kind of don't want to be one of you don't want to be one of those people, because you want your family to love you, right? So you have to dismantle that conversation in your head, which is, it actually ties into something else. I really pay attention to speaking well of people, especially people who have what I want. Because if I don't speak well of them, then unconsciously my brain's going, well, you can't become what they are, because people are going to talk about you like that.
Yeah, and I've experienced that as well, actually. I've spent a lot of time trying to not dog on people for their decisions and their choices.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is another thing I'll give you. I've read a lot of stuff on brain function. The brain cannot execute a knot. It's like a 2-year-old, and you take the car keys away, they've got to have something else to play with. So take the negative thought away, but give yourself instead a positive thought, no matter how stupid and cheesy it feels. Mine always start with, I am excited and grateful that. I'm excited. Anytime I feel anxious, anytime I feel, I actually switch over to the mantra from that book, The Big Leap, which is, I expand in love, abundance, and success every day as I inspire others to do the same. And you just let it go, because this is part of what's been going on with the election and people who disagree with the outcome, myself included. Oh my gosh, I did my fair share of screaming and complaining. And then one day I was like, what am I doing? I'm giving all that negativity out into the world, and I'm empowering what I don't want with all that attention. It's like dog training. If you pay attention to your dog for behavior you don't want, guess what they're going to keep doing? What you don't want.
Yeah.
So we must take our attention, and that works on us too, on ourselves too. Reward and give your attention to what you do want, and untrain yourself from giving attention to what you don't want, because it's all just energy anyway. And that's just physics.
True.
That's not woo-woo. That's just quantum physics or something like that. Somebody's going to correct me, please do. But that's just science as I understand it. Yeah. So I hope that opens up a thought or two.
It really did. And it's funny, because I was actually having a conversation with a friend the other night where I got really uncharacteristically angry, because I was trying to explain to her why I felt like I didn't need to be subtle because of the recent socio-political paradigm shift that we're currently experiencing. Yeah. And I was like, I don't want to be subtle anymore, and I'm angry, and I want people to know I'm angry. And she was trying to tell me to calm down. And it was really hard for me, like you said, to untrain and to realize that I was putting the same energy I could put into anything else in the wrong places. So I get it.
Yeah, and there's another piece of that too, because I heard a really great talk by Michael Beckwith the other night, talking about his experience post-election, and he said, and these are his words, and I've seen it as well. He said, anybody who's Black or Hispanic in America will tell you that racism's never gone away. Now we can just see it. Now it's out in the open where we see it. And that is not entirely, that's not entirely, I am in grief over it, but I've moved into constructive thought about it, because you know what? You can't dismantle something you can't see. If you can see it, then you can start to take it apart.
Well, in my case, I am Black and I am trans. And so I am trying to maneuver those waters and figure out, how can I deconstruct, move on with an artistic ambition, and not be angry? It's very hard.
Well, you can't not be angry. look at what you've been through in your life, because, being Black and trans in this day and age, you're cutting the trail for everyone after. It's a hard job. There's thorns, there's bushes. It sucks sometimes. And you are absolutely allowed to be angry. It's what you do with that anger. It's how you express that anger. A friend of mine is a ninja. When he gets mad, he gets very calm, and my God, he gets stuff done. I used to, I aspire to that one day. I want to level a building, but that's not constructive, and ultimately it tears me apart inside, and I feel powerless at the end of it. One of the things to keep in mind is that if you look at the current situation as simply two sides, two approaches to the world, one is about connecting and helping and caring and empowering and lifting up, and the other is about fear and hunkering down and excluding and saying no, and being angry. For me, every time I'm mad about what's going on and I give in to that negative finger pointing hate for the other side, I'm occupying that energy I don't want. I've become them.
That's fair.
Do you see it?
Yeah.
It's hard. It's hard to be that mad and that's what King, Gandhi, all the beautiful, beautiful, transformative souls, who worked with that passive resistance way, that's what they meant, and they were right. To just turn around and smack the crap out of somebody is to carry out the same energy they're throwing at you. And ultimately what we want is not that. And so we have to rise even higher above and be even stronger. We have to be
Take the higher road.
And it takes a lot of strength. Look at, look at those who have taken the high road and how inspiring and amazing they are. Look at that and be that.
Yeah.
And you know what? Give yourself the space to go home and throw the crap out of your shoes. And my favorite is just take a dish rag and beat the crap out of the counter, because the sound is amazing. Get your heavy bag and just go at it. And then take a deep breath and go, they will not change me. I am who I am. And then use that same energy and that same focus to open up the possibility for yourself, because we need artists to become very wealthy and powerful and make beautiful things with it and open up the world with it. And that's why we have the art of money.
Well, I promise I'll try my damnedest.
There is no try. There's only do or not do. And some days you
True.
do, and some days you don't. So just do as much as you can.
I will.
All right.
And thank you. Thank you for this talk.
You bet. You bet. All right. That is the art of money, episode 1. Thanks so much, you guys, for hanging out. For everybody I did not get to, I promise next month you will be first up. Have a beautiful night, everybody. Blessings to you. Go do something good.